on individual vehicle approval. My name is Nigel Bass. I'm the Commercial Vehicle Manager here at the SMMT. With me around the table are Peter Hearn, who's Head of Policy Development at the DVSA, Karen Pitt, Operations Manager, and Nigel Maiden, Technical Engineer. The format for today is we'll have the presentation led by DVSA. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session where you can either press the hand button to speak a question, or you can, if you wish, type one in. During the presentation, everybody will be muted, so only the presenters' voices will be heard. If you experience any technical problems, there's a number you can use to dial in. Do you want me to read that out, should I? Yeah, 02073441673. At the end, we will circulate a copy of the presentation to all of the participants. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to Peter Hearn. Welcome, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. Welcome, everybody. This is a very specific and probably a very technical presentation, and we're homing in on the application process for IVA. There may be some technical questions that you want to ask at the end, and we'll probably deal with them separately if we have time, but if not, we'll come back to you later on that. But this is all about the application process. As those people that's involved in the scheme know, this is very technical, and we've had a number of challenges over a period of time. The testing volumes in this particular scheme for DVSA amount to around about 20%, so this is a significant part of what we do. It's a complex scheme covering all sorts of vehicles, cars, trucks and buses, and what we're finding is that we have a fallout rate of around about 40 to 50% of the applications. Now that's after we've done some reworking of the form and done some work on the process itself. So today is really about trying to get to the heart of that, and my colleague who sat alongside me, Karen Pitt, is going to do quite a lot of talking around some of the application process, but we really want to get to the heart of that and give as much knowledge and understanding as we can to everybody out there of where the common failure points are. And of course, obviously, you know, reworking this is expensive. It's expensive for us, and it's obviously expensive for you, as well as all the time issues that ensue. So hopefully you get a lot out of today. Please ask lots of questions at the end if there's bits we've missed and you want to know a bit more. But without further ado, I'll hand over to Karen, who will take you through the slides and explain to you what some of the technical detail and where we're having issues.
Okay.
Karen.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everybody. As Peter has explained, the idea of today is to go through common issues that we are experiencing when customers are submitting applications to us. Give some more of the technical details surrounding those problems, and also what our expectations are regarding what a customer needs to provide when an application is submitted. So like Peter said, we're looking for feedback, and feel free to ask questions. Specifically, I can answer about the application process, and as mentioned, Nigel Maiden is here to answer any more technical questions that I wouldn't be able to answer. So moving on then, background, why we are where we are today. Obviously there's been a number of changes in the IVA scheme over the last few years. Obviously IVA is one of the different routes to approval for individual or very small volume vehicles. There are a number of challenges with the application process. It is very complex, it is a technical process, and there are a lot of background information that is required to allow the test to proceed for inspection. As you can see from the slide, there's a number of challenges that we've experienced over the last year or so. Specifically, there's been issues regarding customer concerns that the application takes too long to process, that there's been no transparency with regard to what happens after the application when it is submitted to us. The feedback we've had is that it falls into a black hole and only kind of pops out at the end when the test location of preference then contacts to arrange the appointment. Historically, it has been very paper-centric. Hard copy submissions to us, hard copy copies of background information or evidence of conformity, and historically we accepted all applications. Now this led to a situation where the resource team in Swansea who processed the applications were unable to cope with the volume, and we started then to try and think about how we could improve the situation moving forward. So again, as you can see from the slides, we have introduced an online application system. As part of the introduction of that system, we now have automated alerts that get sent out to customers at various points within the workflow. There's a lot of web-based functions, so there's a lot more information now on gov.uk regarding the application process. There's guidance notes available. And what also we have done is soft rejection of applications which aren't correctly completed. Because of the resource it takes to check these applications, to check and chase customers regarding information that hasn't been provided, we have started to do soft rejections, and I'll go on to what that means in the next couple of slides. In the last few weeks, we've also centralised the payment process. So we have moved any payment requests used to come into my processing team in the customer service centre. Those are now centralised into our telephony area of the customer service centre, so that has speeded up the process. We are also just starting to trial centralised bookings for one of our test locations. We're moving on to a second one in the next couple of weeks, and if successful, then we'll be taking that forward for DVSA as a whole as well. So where we're going. We are currently making improvements to the online application system. Specifically, we do have a current issue regarding any responses to automatically generated emails. We're hoping by September, October that problem will be resolved, and that should speed up the flow of information if we do request further documents from customers at that point. Like I mentioned, we've also centralised the payments, and we are centralising bookings hopefully in the near future if the trial is successful. Okay, so the next slide is basically the ideal scenario with regard to submitting an application. This would guarantee the quickest turnaround time for applications submitted to my team in Swansea. As mentioned, so step one, there is an online application process. So if you go on gov.uk, search for apply for an IVA, there is that submission service there. We recommend that you do use gov.uk to obtain the application to make sure it's the latest version. And there is, like I mentioned, guidance online attached to every application vehicle type with regard to how to fill the application in. So step two is just a breakdown really of how the application submission works online. So you provide your contact details, you provide vehicle details, and then attach the documents that you need to, and that would include the application form plus any supporting documentation that you have and need to submit. We do have issues with some customers ringing us and telling us that they can't view the submission system. Unfortunately, it does only work with the latest browsers, so I would just double check that your browser does support the online system. So step three, once the application has been submitted, there are various emails that a customer will receive at various workflow points. Basically, there is a workflow point for receipt of application, there is a workflow point for when we book the application and strip the test fee, and then there is a workflow point where the assessment is made of the form and that is complete. You will then receive another email from the system to say that the vehicle is ready for inspection, and to make an appointment for inspection, your testing location, which you have listed as your preferred option on the application form, will give you a ring and then arrange a time and a date for an application, for an appointment for you. Any issues regarding that process or any questions regarding where your application is, if you ring our customer service centre national number of 0300 123 9000, they should be able to give you up-to-date information on where your application is. Okay, moving on to the next slide, which is basic errors. So following concerns we had regarding turnaround times, what we've decided to do is reject forms which are missing the basic information, and this slide provides information on what that is. So the first one is test station. So we need a preference, and that can be a DVSA location or it can be a privately owned testing facility. It enables us to make the actual initial booking, and without being able to do that, we can't start the application process. We also need the full VIN number. So in most instances, a VIN should contain 17 characters. Applications cannot be booked without that information. We can't provide a Z number or a C number for trailers without that information. Also, the application should be signed, so applicant must sign the data protection and declaration for all applications, and of course anything that is submitted online, the electronic signature is absolutely fine. So if those basic information aren't provided on the form, then the application will be rejected back to you. Moving on, again, basic errors on payments, certainly around DVSA pre-funded accounts. The person who's actually signing the form must be a delegate on a pre-funded account and therefore have authorization to draw down funds from that pre-funded account. If somebody signs who isn't a delegate, the form will be rejected back. Any information regarding credit or debit cards, applicants will receive an automatic email once their application is entered. We don't hold up applications if they haven't yet been paid, but we will not release them for inspection until payment has been processed. So the sooner you can do that, the better in the process, and if you ring the 0300 number, then they will be able to take payment for you. Okay, so those are the basic errors that we've received, and depending on what has been submitted, there is a risk of your application being rejected at that point. We're moving on now to the more technical errors with regard to the information listed on the application form. Currently, as I mentioned, we're kind of soft rejecting. If there are errors such as the ones contained in the next few slides on your application, the likelihood is it won't be rejected, but there will be further contact made by my team to either obtain the information or obtain clarification on the information or request more information. So the slide we've highlighted as the major problems with the forms. We won't go into every question, but obviously if you have questions on items we don't mention, please feel free to raise those at the end of the session. So the first one are incorrect forms being completed. So customers submit the incorrect application form for the vehicle type. So for clarification, an IVA 1C form must be completed for passenger cars, which have a maximum of 9 seats, including the driver. An IVA 1LG form must be completed for light goods vehicles weighing not more than 3,500 kilo, which have a maximum of 7 seats, including the driver. If a goods vehicle meets the following criteria, it can undergo a passenger test, and an IVA 1C should be completed. So if a vehicle has a gross vehicle weight of not more than 6,500 kilo, if the vehicle has 4 or more seats including the driver, and the length of the load area does not comprise more than 40% of the total vehicle length. So it's just make sure that you are filling in the correct application, otherwise the application will be returned because obviously there will be a number of pieces of information missing and we will not be able to process that application. So moving on then to sections 4N to 4W on the IVA1C, and the same section is 4Q to 4Y on the IVA1LG. So customers are not regularly completing these sections, and these sections are coloured blue on the application. This information is required for all applications unless they're a Class R vehicle, and a certificate of conformity is provided instead. So make sure those sections are completed, please. Moving on to the next slide. The next major error point is section 1B on the IVA1LG form. So customers either do not give an answer to the position of stamped VIN on the vehicle or give the location of the visible VIN, i.e. the windscreen. So all vehicles registered in the UK, other than vehicles meeting the American standard, must have a unique stamped-in VIN. This is usually stamped into the body or chassis of the vehicle. Its location can be established by either consulting the vehicle handbook or the vehicle manufacturer. So just make sure that that information is completed, and like mentioned there, we won't accept windscreen as an option. It will be a customer, a contact from us just to gain clarification on that. The next point is lack of understanding of what support and documentation is required, and this is especially around personal imports. There is a misinterpretation of the personal import class of the application, and customers believe that the vehicle is a personal import purely because they have purchased it for their own use. There is a classification for personal import, and it's only if the applicant can prove that they have lived in the country of export for at least 12 months by providing utility bills, for example, in the country of export covering a minimum 12-month period. The applicant can prove that they have the vehicle in their possession for at least 6 months in the country of export by providing the registration, for example. And the applicant can prove that they have used the vehicle for at least 6 months in the country of export, again providing such things as an insurance certificate for that vehicle. So those are the major errors for the IVA1C and LG forms. If anybody does have further questions regarding those forms, we can answer those in the session at the end. We're now going to move on to the IVA1T form, which is obviously the trailers. Again, we've picked up the major error problems that we have, and we're just going to give a little bit of guidance with regard to what our expectations are and what information we are after in this specific section. So the first one is section 3H, which is also listed in Annex 5 as a directive compliance. Applicants often do not know whether a steering effort report is required. If the trailer has no steerable axles, then you do not need to supply any steering effort approval. Customers, like we mentioned, do not know, but there is guidance out there. So we would advise you to refer to the Commission Directive 92/62 EEC document online, and if you go to section 4.2.3.2, there is further information in there. The next section is section 4H, again also Annex 3B, which is the rear underrun. Again, lack of support in documentation, customers not providing the information we require, and therefore it's a delay in the process, chasing customers then for that information. So where a rear underrun device is fitted, either an approval or a test report from a technical service needs to be provided. Each application needs to contain this information, and if the vehicle is considered exempt, further evidence should be provided. Currently, like I mentioned, is a question of us chasing for that information, which delays the process. Section 4J, K and L, these questions are not required to be completed when the trailer has a complete or incomplete EC certificate of conformity and the base trailer has not been modified. If not, then the questions always need to be ticked, even if the answer is no to all of them, as we need to be clear whether the application needs to be linked to a test report or not. Section 4I, which is a coupling device approval number, which is normally missing. Please make sure that you complete this box with the correct coupling approval number. We would expect to see an approval relating to the directive requirement 9420 EC or regulation 55.01. You may find this information on any approval information you have for the coupling or possibly on the coupling itself. Like I mentioned, the full approval or regulation number is required. Moving on to the next slide, which is section 6. Missing measurement information which is needed for the plating of 03 and 04 trailers. So if the trailer requires plating and doesn't have a complete or incomplete EC certificate of conformity for an unmodified base trailer, then section C, question 6A to 6E always needs to be completed. The measurements need to be completed by the applicant and not taken off the COC. This is because the COC can sometimes give the maximum measurements as opposed to the actual measurements for the trailer. Section 7 is weights. Maximum design load imposed on a drawing vehicle is required for all trailers and should not be left blank. It is often referred to as the nose weight, just in case anybody needs clarity on that. The next slide is, again, lack of or incorrect supporting documentation for 02 trailer brakes and, on occasion, 01 trailers. Annex 9A, 9B and 9C. So for clarity, for an 02 trailer and an 01 with brakes, please supply a copy of each of the 3 approvals or reports needed to demonstrate compliance. An approval or report demonstrating EC effective compliance is required for the foundation brake, for the trailer brake control device, which may be incorporated into the coupling, and a compatibility report for the use of the coupling with the foundation brake. The compatibility report must relate to the brakes and coupling used. Just a general comment then on the annex. Customers aren't always completing test report for approval numbers in Annex A, so please can you complete these details where mandatory evidence of compliance is required. Please quote the test or approval number through your documentation which supports your application, and if an item isn't applicable, please put not applicable, which just may solve a problem or answer a query for us and result in us not chasing you for information. So moving on next to heavy vehicles, so N2 and N3 vehicles. Section 1A, statutory versus voluntary. The price of the voluntary test is different to that of the statutory test, and a voluntary test is usually the option taken if a vehicle has already been registered by the DVLA but needs further approval. This test type, the voluntary, would not grant you an individual approval certificate needed to register, and therefore please be sure you have chosen the correct option, and that option will usually be a statutory test. Section 3F, HGV equipped to draw trailer. If the HGV is equipped to draw trailer, please ensure you confirm whether it is a ball or jaw type coupling and the capacity. For example, ball will usually be 3,500 kilos. If it is a jaw type coupling, please ensure the make and model is provided. Section 4C, which is incomplete or complete vehicle. This question asks if the vehicle has a certificate of conformity as either an incomplete or complete vehicle. The approval number will have a format similar to what is given on the slide. I won't read it out. It will say on the certificate of conformity whether or not it is a complete or an incomplete approval. Moving on to section 4C2, this question needs to be answered if any part of question 4C, which is part 1 and 2, is answered yes. In order to pass the IVA, the HGV should be suitable for left-hand traffic. Section 4E is modification since NSSTA or ECWVTA approval. Please include all modifications that have been made to the vehicle since the vehicle was given a certificate of conformity. For example, if the certificate of conformity is for an incomplete vehicle, has there been modification to the wheelbase? It is just the case that of a body or other equipment being fitted to the base vehicle. If the certificate of conformity is for a complete vehicle, has it been imported and adapted for use on UK roads, for example, headlights or speedometer change? If there have been no modifications at all made following a complete certificate of conformity, you need to tell us exactly why an IVA is required, for example, a time-lapse certificate of conformity. Section 4H is rear underrun. If the vehicle has a rear underrun, please tick the corresponding box as to whether it is an original manufacturer's product or if it is an aftermarket product. Please ensure if it is an aftermarket product that you provide the approval document or test report for it. And if you tick that it's exempt from a rear underrun, we will require further evidence as to why you would consider it exempt. For example, if it's a car transporter, please ensure you answer question 3I, type of body with car transporter. You can also put reasons for this exemption under question 4E. For example, vehicle fitted with a rear loading refuse collection body and therefore exempt from rear underrun. Moving on to the next slide, section C, which is items 5 to 7, which is plating. If the HGV is going to be used for the carriage of goods, then plating will be required. The answers to most of the questions in section C should be available from the base vehicle manufacturer, and please note the information required is not normally available on the certificate of conformity. Moving on, section 5E is tyre condition. So this asks which tyre use condition applies and the options available, which is 2B, 2J and 2R. Please complete the appropriate option. These are fully explained in the customer guidance notes, which are on gov.uk with the application form. Section 5F, which is tyre or suspension fitment details. So please make sure all fields in this question are answered, and the slides give an example of what we would be looking for. The tyre information should come from the tyres to be fitted to the vehicle and not the certificate of conformity. Question 6, which is length and width dimensions. The measurements need to be done by the applicant and not taken off the certificate of conformity. This is because the COC can sometimes give maximum measurements as opposed to the accurate measurements and may not be representative of the completed vehicle. The figures can be estimated from the manufacturer's or bodybuilder drawings if the vehicle is yet to be completed. And a general comment regarding HGVs then is supporting documents. So please ensure a signed chassis-specific statement of compliance is provided for each application. The document is available from the manufacturer and needs to show approval numbers the HGV complies with, and it must be signed by someone authorised to provide type approval information. So moving on now to PSVs, so M2 and M3 vehicles. So the first error point we've picked up on the processing team is section 4BI, which is split braking arrangement. So this needs to be established to ensure that the correct method is used in assessing the brake system. You may need to contact the manufacturer or dealer distributor to obtain the information which is not normally on any approval certificates. The information we kind of would like to see is if it's a 2-axle, it would be front, rear or diagonal. If it's a 3-axle, it'll be 1 + 3 + 2 or 1 + 3. Section 6 is weights. So design weights, or the weight the vehicle is to be operated at in GB, needs to be completed at all cases, not only when a weight change is required. The weights can be obtained from the incomplete COC, the manufacturer's plate or the manufacturer. Section Annex Item 19, which is the completion of the 19A Seatbelt Anchorage Compliance Declaration. So the 19A declaration form requests specific information regarding report numbers, technical service names, etc., which the applicant needs to transfer from the reports relating to the components. The information is frequently incorrect. Declaration also needs to be signed by either the floor manufacturer or a technical service. So those slides, I hope, have highlighted the major error points that we have, and which results in not only increased customer contact to try and clarify the information, but ultimately results in delays with the application process itself. We do have a team dedicated to processing IVA applications. There are specialities within that team, and if you do want direct details regarding contact, just raise a question, I can provide that. All applications are processed electronically using the technical application system, so even where someone currently emails or posts an application to us, to ensure process consistency, that information is then uploaded into the system. You will then receive emails generated from that system, even if you have submitted it via other means. The team will make your primary contact your email address to notify errors or reason for rejection. And if you do need to contact the team, please email approvals@rosa.gsi.gov.uk. And if you could give us the task reference number, that would be very useful with regard to highlighting where your application is in the process.
Thank you, Karen. That's obviously a very technical discussion there. I appreciate that for some people on the call might be too technical, and maybe some people as well.
Maybe right there, Peter. Yeah.
It's obviously based on the research we've done around the application, so it is, you know, it's accurate, and it's the feedback that we've obviously got from our contact centre and Karen's processing team. If we've missed anything, then please give us some feedback in terms of other areas that you want us to look at. But having said that, I'll hand you back to Nigel now.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you, Karen. I hope you all found that useful. We will be moving on to a Q&A session, but before that, we just need to ask you guys a couple of questions just to help us plan future events. You'll see appear on your screen, excuse me, a couple of questions. Poll 1. Was this webinar useful? You just need to vote yes or no. And poll 2, would you like to see further webinars on this subject? And we're certainly happy to hold them in the future if the need arises. So we're going to give you 30 seconds just to answer these two questions, and then we'll move on to any questions that you may have. Thank you. Okay, right, thank you for that. Very useful. 98% said you all found it useful, so that's good. And only a few of you said no to the second question. Okay, right, moving on. So we hand it over to you now. So as I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to ask a question, please just click on the hand symbol. and we'll get to you. Or alternatively, you can type in your question if you so wish. So over to you. Okay, so here we've had a few people type in some questions. So this is from Kevin Roberts. Sorry. Does the test station need to be completed if you are applying for a non-inspect IVA, as the completed vehicle is over 4 meters in overall height? Contacted, I think that word is supposed to say, does it? Sorry, Kevin, we don't really understand your question. Maybe you'd like to retype it in. So
yeah, as part of our booking process, we do need to allocate each of the applications to a test location.
Right.
So even if it is a non-inspect, we would still need to allocate it. Now, that's not to say we couldn't allocate it to an internal test location, but obviously it would be an easier process if they could just put a test location, and if it's a non-inspect, then obviously it never gets there.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Next question is from Gunter. As a bodybuilder, to do the IVA, the chassis manufacturer, the bodybuilder and the end customer need to have access to the IVA online formula. Is this possible? Online formula.
Maybe I think Mandy a little bit more qualification as to what Gunter means on that particular.
Yeah, Gunter, could you just give us a bit more information on that, please? And while you're doing so, we'll just move on to the next one. On to Christine. Are wet kits under 3% exempt from IVA?
Yes, I believe they are.
Okay, there you go. That was an easy one. Thank you very much. Also from Christine, are as long as they are beacon bars, as long as they are the plug-in type exempt from IVA. Nigel.
Well, if they were presented with the vehicle, they come under the inspection. If they were presented with the vehicle at the time of test, they subject to the inspection.
Okay, thank you for that. So moving on to Amanda. When submitting the paperwork, does the statement of compliance have to be in hard copy, or can this be an electronic version?
We will accept electronic version at the time of application. It is a requirement that original documentation is taken to the test location for the appointment.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Jonathan. Are there future planned developments to speed up the application process?
Yeah, so there's further work ongoing. As Karen mentioned earlier, there's changes to the system that we're making actually as we speak, which will take a number of weeks because they're IT related. Eventually, we want this to be a web-based system. We want a system that's very different by nature and by design. That'll take some time, but work is ongoing already. We've started that work. We've had conversations in a wider perspective. And people in drawing those conversations together with those and DVLA, and so we'd look to a joint system as we progress into the sort of next generation of this. Can't give a time scale of that, unfortunately, at the minute, but it's a priority and important to us as much as it is to you.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, moving on to Martin. When does the online trial go fully live?
Presumably this is the booking.
Well, the application system to submit is now live for all of IVA. If you're talking about the centralised booking, we are trialling a second site over the coming weeks. If that is successful, then we will look to probably roll out somewhere towards the end of the year.
Okay, thanks very much. Peter, I see the session is being recorded. Well spotted. And yes, you will get a copy at the end. Gareth, where a base vehicle is modified from one type, for example an N1 van, going to, for example, a motorhome, which is M1, how will the applicant know which form should be used, i.e. a 1C or a 1LG?
The applicant would use the form appropriate to the vehicle as it's being presented. So if it's being presented as a motor caravan, we'd expect it to be, the application to be on an IVA 1C.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to, I may pronounce this wrong, Bronner. The test centres don't always seem to be up to speed with new legislation, for example, spray suppression, air water separators, etc. What is the process for updated documents getting to the test engineers?
Yes, the inspection manual that the inspectors work with is published on the website. So that, generally speaking, the document they use is available to everybody. However, there is an interim memo system which allows inspectors to be notified of relevant updates that need to be done urgently and prior to the next update of the manual, which is usually every 4 to 6 months.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. And we're Samantha. What is the current lead time for N2, N3 submissions?
As of yesterday morning, we were averaging 8.66 days across all of the schemes. Specifically N2 and N3, we are just under the 10 working days, I believe, as of yesterday.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. Next question from Grenville. Would SMMT create a database to access a library of compliance test EU approval codes? I think the answer to that question is probably no, because we've talked about things like this in the past, and the danger is we just end up becoming another part of the application process. I mean, we do work very closely with DVSA on, in fact, I meet with Karen, Peter and Nigel almost on a monthly basis to look at ways to improve this. But I don't think at this stage that we need to put another body in between the process, in between us, the customer, yourselves, and the DVSA. But we do constantly strive to and work with DVSA to improve this process. Hence the reason for this webinar, of course. I hope that answers your question. Moving on to Jane. Some confusion with the different reference numbers given during the application. For example, TAS, booking ref, and Z number. It is difficult to tie in the PFA statement when received to identify which payment is for pre-funded accounts.
Yeah.
Okay. When received to identify which payment is for which vehicle.
Yeah, unfortunately that is a known issue. We have restrictions with regard to our financial systems. We can't put TAS, booking or Z numbers against the PFA statement. We do provide in the automated email reference to, not obviously you get the TAS reference number, but we also make reference to the Z number and give you the chassis number. So hopefully you should be able to tie all those together, but there is a known issue with a PFA statement not showing everything that you probably need.
Okay, thanks Karen. Moving on to Arno. When I call a phone number to have information about the IVA in process, yeah, some people seem to work with the Z number more than the TAS. So could the Z number be included in the automated email as a TAS number?
Yeah, we can look to do that. If that will help, that's not a problem.
Okay, well, hopefully that was a satisfactory answer. Hi Tony. If an IVA has been obtained from an IE, is that right? Yeah, and question 4D has been ticked as yes, how much of the rest of the form needs to be completed?
I would say if it's an IVA from another member state, then the rest of the form all needs to be completed. It really depends on the information that's provided with that IVA as to whether we actually process it using that. Is that what we're saying?
Ireland, IE is Ireland. Oh, sorry, are we reading that statement?
Yeah.
If an IVA has been obtained from Ireland, is that what? I guess that's the question you're asking.
If an IVA has been, yes, currently we still require the full application to be completed.
Okay. Moving on to Martin. We're a trailer manufacturer of standard design. Do we need to register each trailer individually, or is there a certificate that will cover all the trailers we produce?
Statement of consent, I would imagine, letter. This is a consent application question, I would suspect, in which case the applications have to be submitted individually. There's no blanket statement given for consent for trailers.
If all your trailers are the same, of course, you can use National Small Series.
That's the solution.
Which is, yeah, and if you do any, I think it's fair to say, any form of company, you answer that.
But if it's consent, they still have to apply.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah.
Obviously, by nature, IVA is for individual approvals. Yeah. There is a National Small Series, which is a different scheme, which is there to cater for, obviously, for slightly larger production runs. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Moving on to Michelle. Is it possible to expand the space to enter type approval numbers, e.g. lots of lights fitted but not enough space allowed for all certificates?
Yes, we can certainly amend.
We can look to do that. I mean, the question is really whether we need all that information, because in individual vehicle approval, generally lights would come under a visual assessment, so we wouldn't need approval information for the lights, providing they had an E-mark on them. So we might be a situation where we're actually obtaining more information or being given more information than we actually need.
Okay. And Martin, that's your second question. I'll take it. What determines which information is included on the manufacturer's statement of compliance?
The thing that determines the amount of information needed is really the category of vehicle. We only require information on the mandatory items, which are in the annex on the application form. However, it's beneficial to provide all the information as much as possible, because when it comes to the examination of the vehicle, seeing that the vehicle has, for example, an approval for the rear underrun, it really gives the examiner confidence without doing a thorough inspection. Providing the item hasn't been further modified, we would take note of the statement of compliance that the vehicle has been approved as a base vehicle.
Okay, thanks for that. Moving on to Andy Duncan. I have problems downplating 16-ton downrating, I guess you mean, downplating 16-ton chassis to 15-ton, which was not a problem in the first 6 months of IVA, but now it is. I now have 9 vehicles that can't be passed to the customer, still awaiting DVSA to process the COCs. Been waiting now a month.
I think that, I mean, downrating shouldn't change the basic process, I don't think, because we now do voluntary down rates, whether it be on an individual vehicle approval. You can actually voluntary down rate through the individual approval scheme, or you can down rate after registration through the VTG10 scheme. We now do the down rates on a voluntary basis, where you don't actually need to modify the vehicle. I'm not 100% sure why there's a delay on these. Perhaps we can contact you in the next day or so to find out what the...
Andy will be back in touch with you shortly, just to understand a bit more detail around
that. Both of those are my team, so I'll get in touch with you, Andy, and I'll discuss the individual applications.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to Catherine. I've experienced sometimes where our email address has been uploaded wrongly, which has resulted in us not receiving the automated alerts, or more importantly, a TAS number, which is very frustrating, and trying to contact you by phone to see where the process is up to.
Okay, I can only apologise for that. That's obviously an error on the processing team. What I'm happy to do is give my details out, so if there is ever a problem, certainly get in contact with me and I can have a look into where the application was. I can provide you with all the task numbers. But again, apologies for that. That is an error.
Right. Before we move on to Carlton, I just want to go back to Gunter. Gunter, if you're still online, can you resubmit your question, please, so we can just understand it a bit better? Oh, you already have you? All right, okay. I'll go back up. Okay, Carlton, if we need clarity on anything that was discussed in today's session, how do we go back? Okay, right. Yeah, on the Q&A, bottom of the Q&A slide, we just drop an email into member services with you any questions you have about this session, and we can sort that out for you. We'll forward that on for you. Christine again. Okay, going back to the question of beacon bars, if the vehicle does not require presenting for any other purpose, are beacon bars exempt?
They could invalidate the existing approval the vehicle's got from the manufacturer or the existing IVA. So theoretically, I suppose that the best advice would be not to include such items before registration.
We don't mind saying that, but there you go. Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you. Hope that's answered your question. Moving on to Martin. We have found a number of issues that are different between vehicles that are built for, so European whole vehicle type approval, were then taken for IVA and failed. Is there any joining up of regulations?
Well, I would say the regulations are joined in the sense that individual vehicle approval originates from EC directives by and large. If a vehicle is presented for an IVA and there's an item that becomes questionable, if the applicant can demonstrate that the vehicle as presented complies with the European approval or complies with a national approval, then that would be acceptable.
Okay, all right, thank you for that, Nigel. Moving on to Gary. COC and compliance paperwork are emailed from manufacturer. Can this be printed off and taken to test station, as trying to get originals from the manufacturer is difficult?
Yes, I would say on that one. Yes, as long as we can see the document trail. We do know that some large manufacturers produce electronic information and email it out to people. It is acceptable if you can demonstrate where it was obtained from.
Okay, moving on to sorry, to David. Okay, yeah. Is it possible for a batch of vehicles, if they are all of the same specification, to receive an IVA certificate if one is presented at the test station and approved?
That's small.
No, yeah. I mean, under individual vehicle approval, any alteration to a vehicle warrants its inspection. Each vehicle is considered as an individual, as the scheme suggests. Batch vehicles tend to be an area covered by national small series approval.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely the route to go down. Okay. Oh, good to see you're back on. All right. Okay. At this time, the chassis manufacturer fills in his data in the PDF format, and we do either. After that, I send the formula PDF to the end customer, and he handed in the formula to the IVA station. If all involved persons would do this online, okay, so could everybody see, could all of this be done online?
Everything can be submitted online. Like I mentioned, there is going to be an upgrade to the submission system in the near future, that anybody emailing directly into the system, as long as they quote the task reference number, that will be automatically allocated against the application. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully in the near future that would be able to be done.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Moving on to Keith. Laminated VTG plates are issued after inspection, but then are reissued after registration showing the registration number. Why is this duplicated?
It depends on the situation. When the vehicle comes in for inspection. If it's a trailer, then we would issue the plate and documents at the station. There's no need to reissue on a trailer because we allocate the C reference number to the trailer before we start the process. For a goods vehicle, generally speaking, if the vehicle is brand new, we would not normally issue the plates at the inspection stage. We'd wait until the evidence of registration is returned to us in the same way as if a vehicle was registered using a certificate of conformity. The one situation where we would issue plating documents is if the vehicle was actually of an age where it was in the next couple of months due for an MOT. So if it was a vehicle that had been used and was, say, more than 10 months old, we'd certainly issue plates at that point in time.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. Moving on to Gareth. Any means of tracking applications online without the need to contact the central office? I guess we mean Swansea, as we appreciate taking time from the DVSA team with a call will slow the whole process down.
Unfortunately, even though it's an online submission system, we don't currently have a tracking system. The emails are sent out at points in the workflow to keep you updated, but at the moment we don't have a system where you can log in and find out where your application is. It is something we are looking at the future, but unfortunately not at the moment.
Okay, back to Grenville. Can an IVA application procedure be used for a company or person designing and building a prototype LCV, 3.5-ton vehicle, that they want to run trials with on the public roads?
Well, yes, anybody can submit a vehicle for an IVA. If it's an unregistered vehicle, then you could apply for a statutory IVA for the vehicle.
Okay, guys, we're starting to run out of time now. We're coming close to 11:30. So what we'll do is we'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll pick up on all the others, and we'll forward them onto DVSA, and they will respond directly to you, because there is a lot more questions to come. So we'll just take a couple more. So we'll take one from John Sage. Are there any other plans to open more test centres for N1 vehicles in the southwest, as the closest to me is over 60 miles away?
Okay, so there's a lot of work going on in DVSA at the moment, and we're trying to integrate some of the access to this through some of the ATF network. What we've done so far is worked out what that criteria is, and we're modifying the contract that surrounds the ATFs. Obviously, this is not necessarily aimed at the ATFs themselves, but obviously they'd be welcome to offer this facility. But we're looking to draw more people into this, and so over the next probably a number of weeks and maybe a couple of months, we're looking to broaden out. This is in the region of 400 plus ATFs at the moment. Some of those could host IVA testing, and so we're looking to broaden out as we migrate from our existing sites, and obviously that's an active thing that we're trying to do. Then we need to place these elsewhere. Inevitably, that will lead to a much wider coverage. It's work we're doing at the moment. It's active. It's ongoing as we speak, and hopefully we'll have some good news on that in the weeks to come.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I'd now like to just Jane, if we have multiple vehicles that are all the same, do they all need to be tested individually?
Back to small series again. So you know, by nature, it's an individual vehicle approval scheme, and anybody that's looking to batch, there's obviously an alternative route through national small series, as Nigel mentioned. And we're happy to give people advice and point them in the right direction if they want to know a bit more about that.
Yeah. Once you've jumped through a couple of hoops, it's a lot easier process to do if you've got multiple vehicles all the same. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry we can't take any more questions, but we are up against time, and there are a lot of them, which is, I guess, a good and a bad sign. So we will forward them on to DVSA, and they will get back to you directly as soon as possible. Thank you very much. I hope you all found it useful, and as we mentioned earlier, if there is an appetite for this, then we will definitely hold future events in the future. Thank you for attending, and have a good day, everybody. Thank you.